Hello, this is Mrs. McCullough, and this lesson is all about using your reading voice and your thinking voice with different types of informational text. Most recently, we talked about using that thinking voice and really listening to how it's whispering to you when we're reading an informational text, such as a Newsella article. And what we're doing is we're paying attention to what the text means. Our reading voice is the one that reads the words and tells us, what the text says, but we really want to tap into that thinking voice and think about what the text means. And now I want to talk to you about some other types of text, like photos or math problems or maps or diagrams, even videos, that you have a thinking voice even when you're looking and reading those different types of text. So let's say you had a friend who had an iPad or some kind of tablet, and really quickly the friend just shows you a picture. And you might be like, oh, that's good. You just saw it. You saw what the picture said. But maybe you want to grab it. You want to take it away from your friend and you want to say, hey, let me see that. And you start to study the picture. And so as you study the picture, you start to see other things that you didn't notice before. And you're starting to make sense of what's happening in the picture. You're really paying attention to what the text means. And so today, that's what we're going to spend time talking about. The different types of informational text, besides just an article or some kind of book with print text. We're going to talk about other types of text where you'll engage that thinking voice. So let me show you on my computer a couple of different things. This first picture here is a photograph taken by someone, and it was in a Newsella article. And so at a quick glance, you see a kid on a horse. But this might be the kind of picture where you're thinking, whoa, let me study that. And so this is where the thinking voice really kicks in. And as you start to study it, well, you notice things with the reading voice. You notice things like it's a white horse with some different colors put on it, little polka dots and some striping on the mane and the tail. And then you notice that there's a kid, a little boy. He's got some boots and a crown on. But when your thinking voice really starts to take over, that's when you start to notice things like that little boy, he's so small, his feet don't even fit in the stirrups. I bet he's about preschool, kindergarten age. I bet he's about 4 or 5 years old. And then you might notice some of the other details, like the polka dotting and the colored mane. And then as you zoom in and you study it closely, then you might even notice that there's a horn on this horse. And you might be thinking, they've turned that horse into a unicorn to make it something special. You see, that's the thinking voice, really trying to figure out what's going on with that picture. And then if you look at the little boy, he's wearing a crown. He has a little king's crown on, and so maybe it's his special day. It's a special occasion just for him, his birthday or some other way that they're celebrating him. And so that's the reading voice, reading the details in the picture even. What does it say? But then the thinking voice, that's what does the picture mean? So a little boy on a special horse to celebrate his special day. All right. Let's look at another one and have you try it now. Let's look at the details that we have here. Well, there's a lady in a pink shirt, and she's pointing to something. There's a dog with a life vest on and something in his mouth. There's a boy hanging on to the life vest, and another lady holding on to the boy and pointing at something in the pool. They're all in the pool. So that's the reading voice. That's what the text says. But what does it mean? What's going on here? I'm going to stop, pause. You use your thinking voice. What do you think they're doing? Yeah, maybe this is some sort of swim lesson. Maybe they're pointing across the pool and the dog is going to go that direction and pull the little boy behind him. I don't know, but it's really neat to try to figure it out, isn't it? This is the kind of picture you would want to study for a minute and look at everything because your thinking voice is trying to figure out what it means. So pictures or photos, that would be one type of text where you would use your reading voice and your thinking voice. But it's not just in reading class, it's also in math class. And so here's an example of a math story problem where we're going to use the reading voice, but then we're going to tap into our thinking voice and see what it's saying to us. So I'll be the reading voice. You can check out up to 3 books each time you visit the school library. Suppose you check out as many books as you can on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. How many books have you checked out? So that's my reading voice. I just read through the story problem, but now I need to go back in and I need to tap into that thinking voice. So as I read the first sentence again, you can check out up to 3 books each time you visit the school library. Okay, so 3 books. So 3 every time you go. I'm using the thinking voice to really kind of visualize myself with 3 books then when I go. Suppose you check out as many books as you can on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And so my thinking voice is saying, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's 3 different days that you can go to the school library. And each time you check out 3 books. So 3 books on Tuesday, 3 books on Thursday, 3 books on Friday. And so now my thinking voice is saying, okay, well, I could skip count 3, 6, 9. I could say 3 books times 3 days in the week. 3 times 3 is 9. That's how many books I've checked out. That's my thinking voice, figuring out the story problem. So now let's check out another problem. I'll be the reading voice. You can follow along and then be tapping into your thinking voice. What do you need to be thinking about to solve this problem? Sled dogs sometimes wear booties to keep their paws warm. A dog owner wants to buy booties for 9 dogs. How many booties does he need? Okay, that's the reading voice. But now we've got to tap into that thinking voice. Let's go back to reread. Sled dogs sometimes wear booties to keep their paws warm. Okay, so are you visualizing it? Are you seeing the dogs with little booties on their paws? Are you thinking about how many paws on a dog? That's what your thinking voice is starting to visualize and consider. It's trying to think about what this really means. A dog owner wants to buy booties for 9 dogs. Okay, so now we know that there are 4 paws. And so your thinking voice is thinking about, okay, how many dogs are we buying this for? That's right, 9 dogs. So how many booties does he need? What would you do to figure that out? That's the thinking voice. Yeah, so 9 dogs times 4. We could do that. 9 times 4. You could think about 9, 9, 9, 9. Absolutely. You could draw it out. That could be the thinking voice trying to visualize it and draw it out. So 9 times 4, 36. That's how many booties he needs. That's the thinking voice. Okay, let's keep going because there are other types of text that we can use our reading voice, thinking voice. Let's say you're in social studies class and you're starting to look at maps and you are really diving in to all of the different icons that you see, for example, on this map. Well, you have to check the key, right? You have to see what all those icons represent. So we've got aluminum, beef cattle, chemicals, clay, coal, corn, hogs, limestone, poultry, sand and gravel, soy, steel, transportation equipment, vegetables, wheat. This is all the product that you can find in Indiana because this is a product map of Indiana. So I can see Indiana and how it relates to all of the United States. So I can read everything that's on here, like Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois. I can read the city names and the river names. But what I really need to do to tap into my thinking voice is I really need to study it. This is where I have to be like, oh, let me see that closer. And as I study it, I start to look at certain regions, like maybe up here near Lake Michigan. And I see this icon, and I'm not really sure, this little gray looking icon kind of looks like a capital I. So I come down here and it says steel. Oh, they make a lot of steel up here around Lake Michigan. That's right, because they use the water from the lake to make steel. What if I went down here to the middle of the state and I say, well, what do they make at the state capitol, Indianapolis? And so I start to look and I see it's chemicals and it's also sand and gravel because we have the truck here. And I notice there's a lot of trucks here in the central part of the state, a lot of that in the middle and some up here at the top, but not as much down low. So that's my thinking voice. I'm starting to compare some things. What else? I could also notice that up in the northern part of the state, they have a lot of corn and they have a lot of pigs, hogs that they raise. That's what it says here, hogs. But down in the lower part of the state, there's not as much corn at all. And a few more cows, a few more beef cattle that show up here, a few pigs, but we have more cattle in the southern part of the state than we have in the northern part of the state. We have more corn in the northern part of the state than we have in the southern part of the state. That's my thinking voice really kicking in. So now I want you to try it, but let's look at a different map. Let's look at a map of the United States. So if we look at this, I'll be the reading voice. We have the United States, Canada's up here. We've got Mexico down below, Pacific Ocean, Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic Ocean. We've got Alaska over here in a cutout, Hawaii over here in a cutout, and the map key. The desert, the hills, the mountains, the plains, the water. And so if you look at Alaska, what do you see up here at Alaska? What kinds of different types of geography do they have in Alaska? So use your thinking voice and really study it. What do you see? That's right. They have a lot of things up there. They have the purple mountains. They have the green, so they have the plains. They have the hills. They have the yellow. And they're surrounded by water, right? Well, on three sides anyway. They have a lot of water. The only thing Alaska doesn't have is what? That's right. That's your thinking voice. The desert. That's the only thing that Alaska doesn't have. And so you can use your thinking voice to really look closely at maybe your own state and see what is there, but you can also start to do some comparisons. And so if we think about the desert shows up on the west side of the United States, and there's no desert on the east side. That's the thinking voice when you start to have thoughts like that. So we've covered some photographs and some story problems in math. We've even talked about some maps for social studies, but you know, there's another type of text. There is, where you use your thinking voice. And we actually saw a version of this in our last lesson, where we were talking about coyotes and badgers, and we saw a short little video clip, and we talked through what we saw, but then we started to use that thinking voice, and we were thinking about the moves that the coyote and the badger were making, and we were starting to interpret what it might mean. Well, you can do the same thing with any type of video. And so I've got one here that I want to share with you. Now, when I use a video, I always like to watch it twice. I think that's the best way to go about it, because at first I'm just using my reading voice. I'm just seeing what's there. And then I've got to tap into my thinking voice so I can try to understand it. So here's the first one that I'm going to show you, and we'll watch it together.
Oh, here, look, here it is.
Yes.
And it's on rollback.
So cool.
Ooh, it's a great price.
She's gonna love this. Soundbar.
So she can watch her cartoons in surround sound.
And football.
And football.
Yes. She loves football.
Oh, I know.
All right, so we watched it one time with the reading voice, saw what was there. We saw that they were in a Walmart. They're in the toy aisle. They're picking out different toys. And then she comes with this sound bar, which is like a speaker so that you can hear things on your TV really well. Well, now I'm going to tap into the thinking voice, and I'm going to actually talk about what my thinking voice is saying while we watch it a second time.
Oh, here, look, here it is.
Yes.
And it's on rollback.
Ooh, I bet they have a little girl.
Ooh, it's a great price.
Oh, Fortnite.
She's gonna love this.
And dolls. Maybe they have a boy and a girl.
Soundbar.
So she can watch her cartoons in surround sound.
And football.
And football.
Yes. She loves football.
Oh, I know.
And can watch football in surround sound because the little girl, she loves football. You know what? My thinking voice is telling me it's the dad that really likes football. That's what my thinking voice is saying. And so I want to give you a chance to try this out. I want you to see if you can do the same thing when you are watching a video. And so we'll watch it through the first time. It's just 30 seconds. And we'll just that'll be our reading voice. We'll take it in. And then when we go through it the second time, I want you to see if you can pay attention to what your thinking voice is whispering to you.
Party people!
Get even lower prices. Hundreds of toys now on rollback.
All right. So now what's your thinking voice saying to you? What is going on? What did this text really mean? So let's watch it again and see if that thinking voice is really talking to you.
Party people!
Get even lower prices. Hundreds of toys now on rollback.
All right, so that thinking voice, it's having a lot of different thoughts about the kids, about the season, about how they're feeling at this time. And I'm actually going to go back just a couple of seconds here because I want to pause it at a spot.
Lower prices.
Look at this kid's face. How is he feeling about this? Oh my goodness. How did he feel about that present that he got? Yeah, that's the thinking voice. When you start to infer how the people in the videos are feeling during that informational text that you're watching. So guys, today, what we learned to do today was to use our reading voice and our thinking voice, regardless of what kind of informational text that we are using. And so sometimes it's a print text, like the article that we did in the previous lesson, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a picture or a graphic, a map, a story problem. Sometimes it's a video. And so regardless of what type of text you're reading, you got to use both voices. Readers always use both voices. Remember, they are using the reading voice to determine what the text says, but then they're using the thinking voice to really think about what it means, regardless of the type of text. So if you were in Mrs. McCullough's class, then what I would have you do is I would have you go and look at some of the informational text that we've been reading from our textbook or maybe from some of the picture books that you've been reading. And I'd like for you to really spend time opening it up and looking to see, are there photos? Are there any maps? Are there any charts? And instead of just skipping over it super fast, I want you to zoom in and I want you to study it. I want you to slow down and see what your thinking voice says to you about it. That's what you would do if you were in Mrs. McCullough's class. You'd be tapping into that thinking voice regardless of the type of text. But your own teacher might have a better idea for how to use your thinking voice when you're reading different types of information.